Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hi, Joe.
Hi,
Hey,
Tony.
Tony. Now we got 3 minutes to go.
Tony, I left you a message in chat.
Let me take a look. Yep, we'll get into it. Thank you.
Yep.
Awful quiet out there.
Yeah.
I don't know, people are joining quickly now.
That's why we wait until the 6:30 opening bell.
Well, my clock says 6:30. I'm going on mute, Tony.
Well, it's bound to strike. There we go. Okay, welcome all to the Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting at 6:30 in the evening. Opening the meeting and now moving on to the opening comments. Are there any? Before we go into the published comments?
I just
Well,
want,
there are
go
a
ahead,
bunch
Phil.
of, sorry, Mark.
I just wanted to mention that, we celebrated the life of Kenny Gavin this last few days, and I just wanted to pass my condolences on to his family. We all know what a great man Kenny was. 103 years old. Truly one of the last best generations. So he'll be sorely missed. What a great guy. A great send-off today.
Mark, the last meeting we mentioned it, and you said he was somebody that had that many talents. You referred to him as, was it Marathon Man?
A Renaissance man. He's so-
Renaissance Man, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. Okay, Josh, do you want to pass along your condolences as well as I do?
No, thanks, Mark, for expressing that, and I couldn't agree more.
Okay, Josh, you want to provide the opening comments?
Sure. There are a number of announcements here. 2023 resident parking stickers are now available for purchase at nahant.org. Parking stickers are $10 each. All outstanding bills must be paid to the town, and the census must be completed. Annual dog licenses were due by April 3rd, 2023. A $25 fine will be charged after April 15th. Please call the town clerk with any questions. Annual town census is due back by April 15th, 2023. Please call the town clerk with any questions. The compost area is open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. A 2023 resident Parking sticker is required. Visit the Public Works page at nahant.org for a list of acceptable materials. Curbside leaf pickup will begin on Mondays, starting April 24th through May 22nd. Leaves must be in biodegradable bags only and at your curbside by 7 a.m. Visit the Public Works page for nahant.org for more information. Recycling for metal, white goods, TVs, computers, etc. Is the last Saturday of each month, starting April 29th to October 30th, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. behind the DPW garage on Flash Road. 2023 resident sticker is required. Visit the Public Works Department at nahant.org for accepted material. Certain fees may apply. April 30th, 2023 is the swim annual beach cleanup starting at 11 a.m. at the Lowlands parking lot. Volunteers should meet in the parking lot and then we'll go to Doggy Beach or Short Beach to begin. Annual town election information. The town election is April 29th, 2023. By Wednesday, 19th, 2023 by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 19th. That is the last day to register to vote in the town election. Friday, April 21st, by 5 p.m. The 8-day pre-election campaign finance report is due to town clerk. Monday, May 29th by 5 p.m. The 30-day post-election campaign finance report is due to the town clerk. There are a number of scholarships available to high school seniors. Currently accepting applications for the Charles Kelly Scholarship, the Bob and Janet Munley Scholarship, the Nahant Women's Club Scholarship, the American Legion Scholarship, and the Jennifer J. Harris Scholarships. Visit the scholarships page at nahant.org for applications and contact information.
Just to add one more thing to that, a number of people have been asking what the date is for the town meeting, and it is May 20th, Tony?
Yes, Saturday, May 20, here at the town hall.
Okay, great. And now we're going to move into a public hearing for Comcast and Verizon. So I'll make the motion to open the public hearing with Comcast and Verizon regarding the contract renewal.
Seconded.
Discussion? Is Dan gonna?
Yeah, I can add in, pardon me, guys. This is a state law required hearing because we are looking to renew both Comcast and Verizon's contract moving forward. I think Comcast has 5 years and Verizon has a 10-year contract. Well, they both expired within the past year or two, so it's time to renew. And all this hearing is meant to do is to ascertain what any sort of input the community might have regarding their past issues or praises of the cable systems that they particularly use, or suggest anything that they want to consider moving forward when we finalize the renewed licenses for both Comcast and Verizon. That's all this simply is. Once this hearing is closed, I can report back to Comcast or Verizon what we learned, if anything. Usually these aren't very eventful. And once we do that, we can then go ahead and finalize our leases with our licenses with them. So I don't think Comcast or Verizon, they're not required to be here. They might be here. Jay Summers is with, I believe, Comcast, and Attorney Harrington with Verizon, or I might have it backwards. But in any case, that's the only issue to be discussed tonight, unless someone wants to bring up something else along these lines.
Dan, what I'd like to see before we vote on this at our next meeting is a list of all of the complaints that Verizon or Comcast has received.
Yes, we gathered that. There's not many, but I'll forward that to you before next meeting.
Okay. And then there'll be conditions on the licenses. Isn't there some payments to the town in terms of?
Yes, there are some payments for the cable system. And that's really just a pass through, to be honest. It just goes to the actual ratepayer. And there are some franchise fees to pay. things of that nature. I don't think there'll be a terribly big change moving forward, but there are some intangibles there we can discuss the next time we address the issue, for sure. One of which is, I think it's veterans discount, I believe is what it was.
Mhm.
So that's also on the table.
Okay.
Do we have anybody from Comcast or Verizon that wishes to speak?
Why don't we, so you have a motion to open the hearing and you've discussed it. Why don't you take a vote to officially open the hearing?
I think we did.
We did.
No.
Nope,
No, we
just do a roll call vote, that's all.
Yeah, and there was a second. Yeah, just
Yep.
a roll call vote, yes.
Okay, roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye. Mark, you want to pick up on the new business, please?
Oh, we're not done yet. We're not
well,
So
done.
now
Yeah.
now the hearing is officially open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if there's anyone on the call from Comcast or Verizon, if you'd wish to speak, you can unmute and speak now.
That's what I asked.
So it
Okay,
sounds like there's no one there. So if anyone from the public wants to comment on their experience or their future desires, would be the next issue.
Hearing no further discussion, can we take a roll call vote?
Yeah, I think we can
So
close the
now
hearing.
what you'll do now is you'll motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
I move that the Board of Selectmen close the public hearing.
Seconded.
Second. Yes,
Roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
What happened there?
It's statutorily required, it's required by the regulations that we give the public a right to speak. And we did that. We put the posting in the paper each of the past 2 weeks. It's something that we eventually have to report back to the state that we did.
Okay.
It's like,
Right, now
it's
we
like
can
a
make-
National Grid.
No, I have a motion to close the hearing.
That's
Yeah,
what we just did.
We're done with that.
Okay,
So now we're going to new business.
new business, Mark.
Tony, you want to take this on the composting? I know we have members of SWIM to join us tonight.
Yes, we received a request from SWIM to join our selectmen meeting to discuss composting in the town. And we have a PowerPoint that I'll share on the screen. Ellen Goldberg and Vi Paddock are both on the call. I don't know if anyone else from SWIM is with us. And we'll also be getting into the topic of rodenticides after we get through the composting presentation. So Vi or Ellen, is there anyone else with you tonight, or is it just the two of you guys?
Katerina, you want to unmute?
Yes, I'm here too, Katarina Radelberger.
All right,
And I
great.
believe Christy Lee will be joining shortly.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for being on the call. Always appreciate SWIM's efforts in our town and coordination with the town on a number of different issues, as we just talked about the beach cleanup. We'll start with the townwide composting topic. Do you want me to start sharing my screen?
Yeah, that would be great. This is Ellen Goldberg. Hi, everybody, and I appreciate your time. I will be walking through the primary points of this presentation just to get this discussion started. And Tony, you could put that in presentation view if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Down at the bottom, that little guy. It doesn't matter. You don't have to if you can't do it quickly. And what do we have to in terms of time for the presentation and discussion? How much time do we have?
Well, how much time do you think the PowerPoint's going to take?
I mean, 10 minutes. I could do it shorter if it just wanted to get to the, some main points.
So take whatever time you need.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this presentation today is designed to begin this discussion with the town to try to move us towards townwide composting. Next slide. So that's the ultimate vision, right? That just to be completely transparent, what we're seeing is ultimately curbside composting in Nahant for all residents, and we'd love it. If it were mandatory, there's probably a whole lot of benefits to that. But that's just big picture. Just trying to show you big picture. Next slide. Agenda for this slide deck, so you have a sense of what's going on. We'll discuss the trajectory of composting in Massachusetts, discuss the vision for Nahant. We can talk about some financial analyses that we've done and try to see if we can figure out a path forward. And there are a number of different ways that we could potentially do that. And if you want to interrupt while I'm talking, feel free. This could be a discussion as we go, or you could save your questions to the end. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever you want. Whatever makes people happy. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Composting in Massachusetts. So you probably all know the 20, well, maybe you don't, but the 2030 solid waste master plan for the Commonwealth really is targeting compost and organics diversion, which is what they technically call organics diversion. We're going to just talk about compost. Their goal is by 2030 to reduce organics in the waste stream by an additional 500,000 tons annually by 2030. So that's a lot, and we can look at some numbers and we can make our own contribution. There are a lot of community composting initiatives on the rise. I know Hamilton was one of the first to actually mandate it curbside. There are some others that are going on that I know about in terms of pilots or, things different in progress. And of course, I'd like to see Nahant on this list as well with a little smiley face. Next slide, please. Just so we're going to move into some numbers in a minute. And I just wanted you to know that one of the things that I've done is I spoke with Mary over at DPW. I got a copy of the town's waste management contract and I did some analysis. This slide here is just some assumptions so you can be confident that the numbers I'm presenting are based in fact and reality and actual contract numbers. So like, for example, our monthly contract roughly costs us $35,000 a month. Right. In the month of February, I looked at a big spreadsheet. It was like 65.5 tons of trash, 2,000 pounds per ton. We pay $86.53 per ton. That increases 4% a year. You get the picture. These are just some assumptions. You don't have to internalize them. Next slide, please.
Ellen, before you get going, I just want to make clear that some people watching that we're talking primarily about food waste compost.
Correct. Yes, correct. Primarily food waste compost. Exactly.
Okay.
You can put other things in your compost that are not just food waste. So you can put paper towels and tissues and bones and if you're doing some gardening and you have a dead plant, you can dump that in there too. I mean, there's a lot more than just food waste, but yes, primarily household. Call it kitchen waste, right? Generally speaking. But yes, thank you. That's a good clarification. I mean, it is self-explanatory. The point here, right? The cost of going up for the trash, current trash costs include organics, and we could divert those organics, right? I mean, that has its own cost, but the fact of the matter is, the state is heading this way anyway. We're going to have to get on board, which is my last point. Compost. I don't think I need to argue this case to anybody here, but compost is environmentally preferred. It's fiscally responsible. It's the right thing to do. It costs less to turn our food waste into dirt than it does to take our waste and haul it away and bury it or burn it. And there's a whole life cycle analysis on that as well. So it's an environmentally preferred option. Next slide. We have some Right, so there's not just one option for composting, right? We could have many options. Currently we have voluntary curbside pickup that Black Earth Services Nahant. They have approximately 60 households that they service, and that's a real number. I spoke to Connor at Black Earth. We have some backyard composting. I don't have numbers on this. I assume there's more than just one person. I am one of those people. So I assume I'm not the only one in a town of 3,400 people.
I'm
It's
one.
good, but it's not ideal. I'm sorry?
I'm one.
Okay, then we got two. Okay, then we got two. We know that there are two.
But you're also one of the 60 mark, right?
I'm one of the 60, right?
Oh, so you do both.
Yes.
I'm one of the
Okay.
60.
Okay, so this is good. This is good input. One idea is we could potentially do a drop off, right? We'd have, some designated bin or like a dumpster type thing, and Black Earth or somebody could come and pick that up. That's okay. It's not ideal. It primarily, I think, has to do with manpower of the DPW to kind of manage it, and to also really believe that people will go and do it. I know Swampscott has this, and I would love to catch up with them to find out how they're doing, but I didn't have time to get that one nailed down before this meeting. We could do a pilot program in order to get some state funding that would subsidize some bins. We'd need 400 people to do 400 housing units, households to do that. And we could move to a mandated curbside pickup townwide, which I envision as the goal, and probably we're going to end up anyway by 2030. So might as well just be transparent about it right now. So there are options. I'm not going to talk about the voluntary or the backyard or the drop off. I'm really going to talk about the pilot and some mandated options. If you could turn to the next slide. This is just some quick numbers here. Mary said we have 1,770 housing units in town. Compost per week for a two-person household is approximately 10 pounds, and we had people weigh their compost for a couple of weeks, so we know that that's an actual number, and it's for two people. I did speak with Connor at Black Earth, and he said that it's probably even more. This is probably a conservative number, and of course, I'm not accounting for the number of people in the number of households that we have, right? So I'm just saying, just for big picture purposes, call it 10 pounds a week. Do 10 pounds a week. Well, anyway, Connor actually thought it was more like 40% of your waste is actually compostable. That's just a clip that I wrote down from my conversation with him. But I went with 10 pounds because that's what we had local people measure for two people households. I mean, you just do this math, you've got 17, if you were to do this townwide and every household participated, big picture, 17,000 pounds per week of organics diverted from the waste stream. Per month, it's 76,000, 920,000 pounds per year. That's 460 tons. At 86 and change, it's $39,000 a year if you had everybody participating. If you look at it like that, you say, well, we really can make a difference.
Ellen, that 39,000 is the cost per ton that you would divert out of the current waste stream, is what you mean?
Correct. That's exactly right. And that's at the current year's price of $86.53.
Which
that goes up.
It goes up every year.
That goes up 4% a year. And when your contract is over, or whether or not you renew it, whether or not they decide they need to raise their prices even more, I don't know. I don't have that insight. So I couldn't really make a 10-year projection here. I have a feeling trash costs are going to go up more. So I have a German Shepherd wanting to get in on the action here.
No, definitely. It's definitely trending upward, and what you're allowed to put in the waste stream is trending downward. So, yeah, I think you're on the right track.
Great.
Ellen,
Could you go to the next slide? Sorry, go ahead.
Is there a fee charged by Black Earth to participate?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. I have some
Okay.
estimates. And they're just estimates based on conversations that we had. And I'm gonna get to it after this slide. So this is another scenario where we say, okay, here's a pilot program. Let's say we get 400 people, and that's at 100% participation, because you figure if they're in a pilot, they're gonna participate. Using those same assumptions, it's 104 tons of organic waste per year diverted from the regular waste stream for a 400 household pilot. And then let's say you have 50, you have different scenarios. You have 50% participation, 75, 90, right? These are different, just different ways of looking at the numbers of what you think we could actually pull off with our residents and what people will do. And it takes time. It takes time to acclimate. It takes time to change your habits. So it's good if we could get on this now. We could all together kind of figure out a way to move forward in a way that is best for everybody, and of course, including the earth. But for everybody's, it's going to keep costing us more money to throw away trash that really can get turned into dirt. Next slide. So here's a summary of some cost reductions over just a few years. These are the same scenarios as above. I just couldn't fit them in one slide and have it was going to be really busy. So these are some numbers over 3 years. In scenario one, it could be $62,000, $93,000, $111,000. Keep in mind, change that 10 pounds to 12 pounds. The number is exponential. We're going conservative on the assumption of 10 pounds per household. Next slide. Okay, I gave an estimate on mandate. So this is a mandated thing. So I said, Connor, what if we were to mandate composting? He's like, well, I might be able to get the cost down to $2 a household if you're able to mandate it. So take a look at some of these numbers. You mandate it at $2, $1,770. You have 100% participation because we're mandating it. It's roughly $104 per household, right? These are just the costs for the contract. We've already talked about what we can save. I didn't do a direct analysis between reduction of waste management and increase of compost, because I think they're going to increase and change at different rates, and I didn't have that insight, and I didn't want to really misrepresent. I'm just trying to show you what I think I know. Okay. So what you're looking at here is, potential costs for a mandated weekly pickup. Next slide. Here we have bi-weekly. I was like, well, what if we don't all want to do a weekly? What if we want to tread slowly? We could do bi-weekly. Now, you then have 2 weeks of compost to hang on to, but it could be done. And it changes your costs a little bit. It doesn't change the amount of reduction unless people start throwing that stuff away again because it's taking up smelly space in their, porch. But, I think every other week is also an option. And here are some costs where it would come down to per household and, the total contract, et cetera. And I figured we could start at $2. I don't know if that's right. Could be $2.50. Go to the next slide, please. Here's a compost pilot cost. Now, this I thought was interesting. Let's see, Watertown's cost per week is $3.30 per week. Lexington is $2.75 a week. I'm not sure why they're different. So I said, okay, we'll split the difference. Let's call it $3 a week per household for 400 households. To participate, here's roughly what it would cost. Could we get 400 households to do this? I feel like we could if we talked to people and figured it out. I think we could figure it out. There are some grants available to help subsidize the cost of the buckets. Perhaps there's a grant available to subsidize some operating costs. I was looking into that with the Department of Environmental Protection, and I spoke with Mary at DPW about her experience with them as well. So there's some options to help subsidize a pilot if we need it, and if we decide to go this route. Next slide. Now I'm trying to remember what I said. Oh, support is available, right? I'm like, oh, what is on the next slide? Right, so technical and operating support is potentially available. When I talked to Mary, she said that there's, in order for us to be able to get participate in like a recycling dividends program, there's this policy that Nahant has to adopt officially for buying things recycled. And so in order for us to be able to get any of some of this money, we just have to, there are some requirements that we'd have to meet. And I was looking into what those were as well. Yeah, so there's some links there, and you can feel free to pass this around if you like, and could go to the next slide. Thank you. Really want to know what the next steps could possibly be. Geez, that's really tiny for me. I'm on a silly little laptop. State grants available. I'm just going to say thanks then, because I can barely see that. So we would love to get Nahant on this trajectory sooner rather than later. We think that we can really help the town, the board here, really understand the amount of tonnage reduction from taking organics out of the waste stream and what that translates into dollars. That can be refined even more if we know the demographic makeup of the household. We can say 10 pounds, 12 pounds, 15. We can present different financial analyses. We can maybe get Connor to provide us a, real cost on paper for a pilot. And let's just figure out how to get this thing rolling is what we're thinking. And really want to know how we can support the board and the town and the DPW on making this happen. And I'd like to thank you again for your time.
Well, thanks, Ellen. I had a question. A lot of this was about the finances associated with it. But I wasn't able to do the addition and subtraction from separate slides. But so there's a cost to do the composting, and then there's a cost reduction for pulling that out. And if those numbers were on the same slide, that would be helpful. Like, is it a net? Obviously, there's other benefits environmentally and so on, but like financially, where does it fall out? Is it a net savings for the residents, or is it a net cost to the residents? That's what I'm trying to sort out.
I'll tell you the honest truth is I think that initially it will be an increased cost. And I just say that completely honestly. I think that the net savings immediately will not be immediately evident. But I think that over a 10-year period, for example, it will cross. Those lines will cross, and the waste reduction will. The waste reduction and the cost of the waste as it increases, and the fact is that the compost prices will not increase as dramatically as the waste prices. I think at some point in the future, you will see a net savings, but I don't believe you're going to see it right away. So there is a case to be made that it's not immediately a cost savings. However, if we can get some subsidized grant money from the state to contribute to the operating costs for up to 5 years, which I saw online, and it very much interested me. So if we could get some grant money to help us develop a program, cover some operating costs, that would be really great. And that would tip the line, I think. But I don't think it's going to tip. I don't think we're tipped right away. I'll be honest. I don't. Not yet.
Another quick question. Is the assumption that Black Earth would be the vendor in this case? And also, is that who all the other communities that you referenced use?
So there are 2 other composting companies that are available to, if we needed to put this out to bid because of procurement laws. And Mary wasn't sure if we actually had to do that for this kind of a contract. But if we did, there are 2 other companies that we could put it out to bid for. Would they bid on it? I don't know. One is called City Compost. I don't remember the other one right now. I wrote them down, but I don't want to go ruffling through my notes. There are 3, and I was working on this presentation on the basis of conversation that I had with Connor at Black Earth and with our teams averaging compost weights and that they were giving to Black Earth.
If I could jump in, Josh, you finish?
I did have one more question, which
Okay.
I was just curious where it goes, like geographically.
Yeah.
Geographically, where does the composting happen?
I don't know the name of the farm, but he mentioned it to me and I could find out for you.
Yeah, I was just curious. Yeah.
Actually,
I'll find out. I mean, he mentioned it.
the way I understand it, the state has paid for certain, I don't know what you call places that have huge grids, and the truck's supposed to come and dump the compost through the grill. And these are like state mandated centers for the composting companies to dump into, and they've been underused. So they're actually central spots where these trucks can go. Black Earth Compost, I believe, has its own places, locations where they manage professionally. It's very important that the stuff be processed properly, they get heated properly, et cetera, be rotated. So that's something else we could learn some more about.
Yeah.
Let me just say, Ellen, thank you so much for putting this presentation on. You did a lot of work in this, and I very much appreciated, and everybody that helped you put this together. I think it's very important. One of the aspects of this that one of the side effects of this that you didn't mention is rodent control and coyote control. I think this is a great opportunity for the town to make sure that it secures its food waste in a way that it's not available for rodents and coyotes and other animals to start getting into your trash. I've been a member of Black Earth now for about 3 or 4 months. I can't be more happy that I joined this. It's easy, it's efficient, and I agree with you 100%. I'm a household of 2 with a lot of visitors, and I generate at least 20 to 25 pounds a week of food waste.
Mm-hmm.
Easily. My only complaint
Easy, right? That's why you can see I was being conservative with my 10 pounds.
And we all know at the end of the month, we look at our refrigerator at the expiration dates of our stuff and say, what am I going to do with this? Do you throw it in the trash or do you throw it in the bin?
Yeah.
And I throw it in the bin now, and it's so much easier. And I'm not, we're doing what's right. And I also know that Black Earth at the end of the year brings compost to your house if you're a participant.
Yep.
So you can use it there. I think I pay $20 a month for curbside pickup. There is an initial cost for a bin. I got the bigger bin, which is I think a 35-quart bin. And that may cost, I don't know, $40 or $50 or something like that. But that's then there are bags that you can get through Black Earth, or you can get it through Amazon.
Or you can just use paper bags from the grocery store.
The grocery store.
Mark, sorry to jump in. The bin that you use, is it special in any way, or is it just like a thick plastic with a lid?
Yeah, it's a thick plastic bin. It's very important, Tony. A thick plastic bin with a very tight closure. It snaps shut. I mean, you cannot open this. A dog or a coyote or a raccoon could not open this bin. And I live in the backyard. I've had it in the backyard now for 3 months. I fill it every day with food waste. Never had a problem. I've never had a dog or another animal in the back of my house, which I always had before when I was throwing my food waste in my trash. So,
What's the suggested means of going from the kitchen table out to the container? Is that in paper bags or?
yeah, so I have so Simple Human has this really neat thing that fits in your sink. When you put your bag in there, you just scrape your waste in there, and when that gets filled, you throw it in the large one. It's very simple.
Here's what I have on my kitchen counter.
Yeah, something like
This is
that.
just right in front of my trash can so that I am not tempted to throw anything away.
I have the same one. It works fine.
So
Yeah.
Tony, thinking, is there some way, I mean, we could think about as a community to, Ellen presented a lot of different options that we should definitely explore, a lot of different grants that we should definitely explore. We would think about subsidizing it in some way. People who participate in this program could get a reduction in their waste and their trash fee, something along those lines.
They already
Yeah,
do.
so.
Well, I think that already exists, right?
Yeah, I was gonna, so this has been, I thank you so much for putting this together. This topic has followed me. My capstone at UMass Boston was on whether Nahant should switch to pay as you throw. And in the past few years, we've renegotiated contract with Waste Management through the change of the industry from recycling being a financial benefit to now it costing more than actual waste. And then, going through the transition of uniform recycle barrels, which we got a grant for, and actually the recycling bin that you get that everyone in town uses is actually made from recycled materials. So I've been involved in this topic in so many different ways, and I completely, it's obvious that there are financial benefits to reducing the tonnage of our household waste that's collected curbside. And Josh asked the right questions: is how does that compare to potential new costs, which is dependent on the type of policy that you put in place. So right now, the town doesn't offer curbside collection of composting, but as you just mentioned, if you are a member of a curbside collection like Black Earth, and you provide your agreement to the town of Nahant, you're eligible for a $20 abatement on your trash bill. So we've tried to incentivize it by providing a rebate on your curbside collection fee. That's one method. The other, I think really what you were talking about there, Ellen, would be if the town jumped into a contract with someone like Black Earth, a company like Black Earth, and we paid for it and then added it to your trash fee. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know really, there really wouldn't be any added burden on the DPW in that type of, I don't think, because it's just like our curbside collection now. But I was going to say that when we bought the recycling bins for the transition to the uniform barrels, we had ordered 135-gallon carts for anybody that wanted to switch to a smaller cart, and they actually messed up when they first delivered them. They used the wrong material, and so they weren't eligible for the grant. So we had to have them make new ones, and they ended up just giving them to us. The other ones, the ones that are not made of recyclable material, but they're hard, sturdy plastic on wheels. I don't know if that could fit in to this scenario where they could be converted with a tight cover lid, but we actually happen to have, 100 of these totes that we could, maybe look at as a potential way to help, incentivize some sort of composting and curbside collection. So I think that we looked in when we went through that grant program, we looked into some of the that other program you mentioned, Ellen, with DEP, I forget the name of it.
Recycling dividends program.
The recycling dividends program. There were some requirements that we weren't particularly fond of. In our effort to survey the community about how we were going to absorb these new costs and, how we might change how we do business. A lot of what we heard and from our neighboring communities as well is that switching to a pay-as-you-throw system wasn't going to fit right for us, for our community. And I think that recycling dividends program really pushed that method. And I don't know if it required it or required you to take steps towards eventually getting there over a certain amount of time. I'd have to take another look at it. But we did look into that a couple of years ago. So, I'd be happy to sit down with Ellen and Vi and Mark or another member of the selectmen and, talk through, what options are on the table for us and do a little bit more of a deeper dive on the financial impacts.
How much of an administrative impact is there on the town to monitor this and to manage it?
Well, currently it's not much because there's only 60 people that have contracts with Black Earth or another company of the like, and I don't think all of them take advantage of the abatement that we currently offer. I encourage people to do that.
I don't. I didn't even know that. I'm a member of the board.
You voted on it. So I don't know. I don't know what it depends. Like I said, it depends on the program. It depends on what program we get involved in, Gene, on how to answer that question on what the administrative burden was.
Yeah, no, just looking at the overall impact of it, because I'm looking at it from the kitchen table to the bucket on the counter to the bucket outside, and the cost of those containers and the billing cycle on those containers or the pickups on a regular basis. It's just when you put it all together, it's more of a convenience, I'm sure, which is great.
Well, yeah, and you're right. You're spot on. I mean, in order success of this type of program and all of my research, you can motivate people with the environmental benefits, and some people are really motivated by that, but most people are motivated by the financial and the convenience factors. So if it provides them some sort of financial benefit like the abatement, maybe that's a reason they take available to it, but the convenience factors is huge. That's what really gets people to divert the waste from the food waste from the waste stream. So you got to find a way to make it easy for people to do.
Yeah. Right. Another important point, Tony, secondary effects, other than sort of like rodent and animal control, keeping food waste out of your mainstream garbage, is our wastewater treatment system. We're not putting, how many pounds, Ellen, were you estimating a year?
I'd say, it was 10 pounds.
It's a whole
per
town.
household. I mean, it was for a pilot project. It was like 104 tons.
Yeah.
Right. It gets more than that as you obviously scale that up. So figure 400 tons a year.
Yeah, and this is a major contribution to our wastewater collection system. It's a major concern for blockages and those types of things, pump stations and everything else. And so, those are benefits that, that we should realize. So
That's a good point. Yeah. Mhm.
Did Black Earth talk about, you had some numbers in there really talking about a mandatory curbside collection.
Yeah.
Did they talk at all about if it wasn't mandatory, but it was incentivized, once we got to so many households signed up, do the rates decrease at certain
Yeah,
thresholds?
the rate was decreasing. Well, we didn't get to that level, to be honest. We talked about the pilot threshold being 400 households, and I think I put that in at $3 per household. So figure, you could kind of scale that in your head, right? If you have 400 households and they're $3 a piece, and then you get, 1,000 or 800, does that go down 25 cents? Does it go down 50 cents? But it does go down because it's the efficiencies of the routes that he's taking, right? They're drivers.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same thing with waste management. It's the same, bi-weekly collection, automated collection. It reduces the labor costs, it increases efficiency. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, let me suggest this. We got a lot on our agenda tonight, and we probably should move on. But Tony, I'm willing to sit down with you and Ellen and her colleagues and swim and bring this discussion a little bit further and come back to a future meeting and make some recommendations.
That'd be great. We would love that.
Yeah.
We'd be really excited to take that next step and have another meeting with you and figure out how we can move forward, basically.
Well, count me in, Tony.
Okay. Me too. Sounds good.
All right. So
You
Tony, should we just connect offline and try and set up a call or a Zoom or something?
Yeah. Yes, let's do that. Let's do that for sure.
Okay.
I envisioned after town meeting, really stepping up the public discussion about cost of our waste and per household, because we're seeing that go up every year. This dovetails nicely into that conversation. So whatever we can do in prep, so that in June, we can start having, some more public discussion about it. That'd be great.
Well, the other piece that I could do is I could get more accurate with the composition of the households so that we can get that number to be less of a kind of dart against the wall and more like, well, you have X 4-person households, 2-person households, 1 person, and then you can make some assumptions that way. That number will change. Those dollars saved will be more significant. And then the cost savings, will come quicker. So I can get that, but I think we'll need to talk together before I can understand that waste management cost over the years as well. That would be helpful. Anyway, we can set that up offline and then maybe get Connor roped in as well after that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, members of SWIM.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much for your time, and we're very excited to hear that there's enthusiasm on this initiative, and we are very excited. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good night.
We had Vi. Did you want to talk? We're kind of behind schedule, but do you want to talk briefly? I have John Coulon on the call too about rodenticides.
Yeah, I decided in the interest of speed that I wrote a little script, so I'll just read it. It'll go faster than bumbling along. So it's educational plus solutions and ideas. So if you are putting down poisons indoors or outdoors to kill rats and mice, you might have already killed pets and wildlife because rodenticides are slow killers. Many rodenticides cause death by internal bleeding. The animal dies a slow and horrible death, wandering aimlessly outdoors while bleeding and attracting predators. If pets and wildlife eat the dying rodents, then they get poisoned. It is such a horrible thought to picture our snowy owls, magnificent hawks, bald eagles. By the way, we've had a bald eagle here quite a bit this winter down by the wharf, and beloved pet cats bleeding to death from their noses and mouths and internally, just because we bought some poison, put it down indoors or outdoors to kill rodents. Maybe some of our pet cats, which have disappeared, died in agony far from home. Even worse, a small child could get hold of some and eat it. I wanted to say that this rodenticide is a blood thinner. So it just thins the blood. Today in Nahant, right this minute, there are outdoor rat traps loaded with rodenticides, black plastic boxes around foundations, next to some commercial buildings today. It would be far better for these businesses to seal up their buildings, trash barrels, dumpsters, and sheds to prevent rats from feasting on foods. So what can we do about this? Educate our residents. The city of Lynn has a pamphlet explaining how to reduce rat populations. I sent this to Tony and also to our health officer, John Coulon, in hopes that Nahant could create a similar document for all to read. To have a look at it, just go to online Lynn Rodent Pamphlet and it'll pop right up and you'll see it. It's very straightforward and simple. I'm hoping that Nahant does not use any rodenticides on public property today. I have no idea. If rodenticides are being used on public property, I urge that this practice be stopped. So here are the most important things to do to prevent rodents from getting into our houses. 1, put all food in plastic or glass containers. No cardboard boxes, paper or plastic bags of flour, pasta, etc. The rodents come into your house for food and not really for anything else. 2, do not put pet food outdoors. 3, and this is really important, seal holes around pipes, foundations, and in attics with steel wool, the kind you get at the hardware store for sanding, not the soap-loaded kind for scrubbing pots and pans, or 1/4-inch gauge wire netting, including on your attic air vents. Rodents are rake climbers. They can scoot right up to your attic and go in those vents and come in through your attic, and you have no idea where they're coming from. And number 4, use trash barrels with tight lids. Trash in open barrels or in bags on the ground generate population explosions of rodents and of coyotes. Coyotes really love trash. I really freak out when I see there's some people in town are still putting out garbage bags of trash, and that really should stop. How to get rid of the rodents you already have? The best way is to use traps. You learn immediately if you've caught a rodent instead of smelling their rotting bodies in their walls. I remember when I was a kid, my mother would put decon out and you'd smell of mice dying in the walls. This is unhealthy and unpleasant. Also, after they die, if they have fleas, guess where they go? You. Has to do with the Black Plague, right? The old-fashioned snap traps are great. The little old ones that we know. You can also get them inside of a box so they're not exposed to view and exposed to pets via a snap trap inside of a box. The most humane way to kill rodents is electric traps. So they go in and they get electrocuted. It's quick. They don't suffer. It's done. And they're in boxes so you don't see it. Do not use glue traps. They are very cruel, and birds and small pets can be killed or injured by them. Can you imagine having your feet stuck to the floor and starving to death right there? That is how they work. It's really horrible. I did check, and you cannot use live catch traps in Massachusetts because it's illegal in Massachusetts to relocate and release any wild animal. So you can't catch mice and take them somewhere else in Massachusetts. It's against the law. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you'll spread the news. And I'm hoping that John Coulon could make some remarks from the health side. John?
Yes, and Vi, we took that pamphlet from Lynn and have already started adjusting it, editing it for the town of Nahant.
Oh, thank you so much. That's
So
super.
it's already in progress. And John, I've spoken with John. It has been a topic of discussion in, his regional meetings with other communities. So John, if you don't mind, could you just briefly catch us up to speed on those conversations?
Sure. Obviously, this is not going to be a topic that is unique to Nahant or any community. It is a problem, standing problem in every community, and the extent of which is going to depend on the community and as Vi has been exhorting people to pay attention to how trash and garbage especially is stored and then put out for collection. That is the basis of what I will go to directly right now, and that is integrated pest management. IPM is what it is known as in the industry, the pest control industry. And in integrated pest management, individuals who are responsible for private homes, rental properties, and commercial properties take a look at the pest that they are wishing to control, and learn about the pest, and go by a very simple phrase as build them out and starve them out. Now notice those two sentences do not involve poisons, although the use of poisons, and in this case rodenticides, is a part of the control of rodents. However, integrated pest management does not go directly to the last step. It starts with the very first steps, and that is again, obviously, build them out. You secure your structure, and try to think like your opponent, and outwit them, and then you starve them out. Try to remove as much as possible from their preferred foods, and then even their unpreferred foods. And this involves not only the proper containerizing of our garbage, but paying attention to how we conduct ourselves, including feeding the birds. There are quite a few folks who believe that a fed bird is a dead bird, that birds are meant to live in the wild. And there are many other folks who enjoy attracting birds to their home and other places where they can be observed and as I said, enjoyed. However, the feed, the food, the seed and suet that the birds do not eat or may cast off becomes manna from heaven for any ground dwelling animals, especially the mice and the rats. And they are part of the food cycle. As Vi was alluding to, the more the rodents are able to sustain themselves based on foods that we inadvertently at times provide to them, the more the rodents become food for apex predators that we may want to control as well. So I'm not saying we have to eliminate all bird feeders, but all those who feed birds really have a part in the social compact to monitor just how they are doing this and do it in such a way that if they're going to discourage rodents from eating the seed and suet, especially what is cast off. And this also includes backyard gardeners. Some of the best backyard gardeners and chicken coop keepers have been paying attention to keeping the predators, including the rodents, out of their gardens or their chicken coops. This has been a terrific approach, which obviously limits the animals that will be able to propagate based on the available food sources. Now, my colleagues and I, not only regionally, but statewide, continue to talk about what is available, what is current in pest control. And rodenticides, while certainly effective for eliminating a target species, is, as I said before, one of the very last things that anyone wants to use. So many of my colleagues have been experimenting with the alternatives that have become available in the industries. And unfortunately, the the electrocution traps have been proving to be at times complex and at times ineffective. So there needs to be not just further study, but further use and refinement of this approach. Although the objective we certainly applaud, and that is to eliminate a target species with little or no involvement of non-target species and no residue as well. Now, I can go on, but I'd like to find out if there's any questions at this point. Apparently not.
John, I have one.
Yeah, sure.
Do we get many complaints?
We get complaints, but in spurts and in particular areas in town. And I'm glad you bring this up, Gene, because when I respond to an area that is focused in the complaint, sometimes I just cannot find what the attractant might be. Sometimes, though, I'm unable to see how folks are storing their garbage on their property. That certainly may be an attractant. However, one undeniable attractant is the animal's sense of smell. And while folks are cooking in their homes, and when our restaurants and event facilities are preparing food, there are many delicious smelling odors put into Nahant's air, and any person or animal that follows their nose is going to do that and try to find the source of the food. And once they find out that they cannot get to it, they have to keep moving. But in the meantime, they've been seen. They've been spotted and perhaps recorded as being in a particular area. So it is one of the, we need people to report sightings, but there are many confounders in terms of focusing on what the attractant may be. Now, I have focused for a number of years on the dumpsters in town, and I can say that except for a few exceptions, undeniable exceptions, the exceptions, in my opinion, have not been enough to sustain a problem population. Storage of garbage at your property where you live or a rental property, again, is going to be an occasional problem, but we've been able to correct those as far as I can tell. I've enlisted the aid of some other folks who have reported sightings to me on their evening walk or specifically walking to see what they could see. And once they've reported something to me, I will go to that property and contact the owner or occupant or business operator. And we've been able to eliminate problems that I've been able to find, but we just cannot find a problem in every situation at every property.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. And thanks for the effort you put into this, to controlling this.
Well, last week, Tony and I and our animal control officer, Scott Greaves, went out and we traveled to town. We talked to some residents. We took a look at some situations on people's properties. And I think that folks got an education in both directions. And I was very pleased with what I saw. I think, by and large, we have very compliant, very concerned citizens in town who take their social compact seriously. I was very pleased.
I did want to say one thing, and that is that, we live by the sea, and rats enjoy the seashore and eat what washes up in the night. In fact, Northeastern did a study some years ago, quite a few years ago, studying with special lights to see what was happening on the shore. And to their surprise, the snowy owls were stuffing themselves with rats on the shore. So, we're gonna have rats no matter what. But, we got to keep them out of the buildings. And, I think these black boxes with the rodenticides inside around these commercial buildings in town tonight is distressing. And, we could easily kill wildlife that we don't want to kill.
I'm glad to be able to say that I've been seeing fewer of those black boxes being used.
Good.
And I'd also like to say we also have seagulls who like to feed on the marine life. And if a dumpster has the cover open, they'll swoop in, grab what they can, and fly out. They'll eat what they wish and drop the rest. And whomever is closest to where that food lands on the ground gets to eat whatever the seagull has dropped on purpose or accidentally. So this is another part that we inadvertently play in the food chain, the cycle of life that we're experiencing in Nahant. I think that we also have a responsibility to our small but important Audubon thicket in town, which is a way station for quite a few birds who either are nesting, roosting, or migrating. And we do take it seriously. And I would say that the people I know in the pest control industry take their role seriously as well. They are paid for their visits, for their attention, and for producing results. They do not get paid based on the amount of poison they put out into the environment. They are interested in getting results using as few instances, as few pounds of that poison as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
I'm very grateful to you, Tony and John, for what you've been doing. It's great. It's so nice to have a response like this.
You're welcome.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, I ran into Scott Greaves, John, and he told me he had been out with you guys, and he was pretty happy with the way things are going in terms of your inspections and looking over what we need looked over.
I'm glad to have him.
Okay. Anything else?
Some event requests, Mr. Chairman? I believe.
We're good.
We have a detail.
We have
listed.
some- okay.
Yeah.
I that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Nahant Police Officer detail for the primary election on Saturday, April 29th, 2023, from 6:45 a.m. and until final votes have been counted and tallied at the Nahant Town Hall, 334 Nahant Road, Nahant, Mass. 01908.
Seconded.
Discussion?
No.
Hearing none, roll call vote.
Josh Evermy.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the following event request. Women's Spring Summer Softball Season, Monday through Thursday, starting at 6:15 p.m. from May 1st, 2023 to August 31st, 2023 at the Lowlands Softball Field and the Johnson School 6th grade moving on ceremony on Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the main hall of the Nahant Town Hall.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Josh Evermy.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye. Tony, you want to take the ongoing business to the beach?
Sure. Actually, I'm gonna have Dan probably lead us off. Dan, if you don't.
Yeah, nothing really has changed. We did get a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Aldrich claiming to interrupt the 20-year continuous and notorious use that we would need to complete in order to vest an easement, but we told Mr. and Mrs. Aldrich back in June that we believe not only has our, being the town's prescriptive easement vested, but also that the public's prescriptive easement has also vested. So it's already our position that those two easements are to our, in the public's benefit already. And that what he sent us and posted on the ramparts, I believe, is really at this point moot. And that position hasn't changed. So really nothing has changed at all. The next step in order to solidify this right would be to file an action in land court, what they call quiet title, if we wanted to go that route. I'm not quite sure we need to at this point, but that's a determination that we can make at some point in the future. But long story short, nothing really has changed.
I'd like to jump in, Tony. You want to take it first?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that, you know, this is a relatively new, as in the last year or so, issue that is, you know, brought to our attention. The town, you know, has always maintained that there's that there's been an unfeathered access to the ramp to get on and off of the beach since it was built. And that's unfeathered access not only for the residents of the town, but also members of, you know, employees of the town who need to access the beach for maintenance purposes. And we consulted with legal counsel, as Dan just mentioned, and actually met with the homeowners and explained to them our position. We provided them a formal document, as Dan just mentioned, last year. And, you know, just recently we received the document that is also posted at the ramp at Tudor Beach. I'll say that there's also been a little bit of confusion that I've understood is that, you know, the blocks that are at the top of the ramp have, you know, in some way have something to do with this topic. And I'd just like to say, you know, those blocks were purchased by the homeowner when they built their seawall and donated to the town as a stormwater impact tool. So we, similar to Short Beach, when we put Jersey barriers up and sandbags to help try to prevent stormwater from coming through the access points, we've been using those blocks in the same manner. They aren't there to prevent, you know, folks from going up and down the ramp. They're really there for a stormwater effort, and this is the second year we've done it. So they will be removed by the town once again this year when we put the stairs in for Tudor Beach, probably at either the end of this week or next week. It's usually early April when we do that. And we do it the same time as the stairs because it requires a crane in order to move them. So that being said, you know, there is clearly a difference in opinion between the homeowner and the town as to rights of that ramp or access to that ramp. The town maintains that there's a public access prescriptive easement, and you know, it's really up to us if we want to pursue some sort of legal action to make that permanent. And then lastly, I'll just say, you know, in our research, we also discovered, you know, it was in 1973, it was actually the town meeting had authorized funding to actually build the ramp.
And Tony, on that point, I did reach out to the previous owner of that address, Mary Ellen Morris, and she couldn't agree more that it was a town. She said, yeah, I always thought it was a town, so I never even questioned it. So this is really a new issue that's come up in the past few years.
You know, I will say, I'll just add that in our conversation with the homeowners, you know, a lot of the concern that was raised was liability. If anyone were to get hurt because the ramp people had been slipping on the ramp. It is, it's deteriorated over time. It needs work on it. So I think that that's the, in part, some of the reason for the concern of the homeowner. But according to Dan, as a prescriptive easement, there'd be protection provided.
Because we own we have the easement, we are what they call a dominant tenement. And the dominant tenant is versus a subordinate tenement. That would be the Aldriches at the very most. I'm not quite sure we're not even giving them they think they own the ramp. We don't agree with that, but just assuming they do. As a dominant tenement, first year of law school, we have the duty to maintain the ramp, and we've always been doing that. That's nothing new, and nothing's going to change in that regard.
Let me just jump in, Tony. I mean, I agree with what town council is saying, and I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think we need to kick this can down the road anymore. I think we need a legal document, telling everyone that the town does have a prescriptive easement on this. I don't want to push this off to the next generation. As you said, town appropriated funds 50 years ago to build this ramp. I've lived in this town for 71 years. We've always had access there. Never had a problem. Clearly, there's a prescriptive easement there. I think we need to formalize that, go to court, and put in the records.
Mark, I couldn't agree more. Town council has done the research, and in his opinion, this has met the legal requirements for prescriptive easement. Town citizens have been using this access to Tudor Beach for decades. You and me both, me for probably 59 years, and as recently as Monday. And as was pointed out, town meeting funded the building of this ramp where there were formerly some stairs. So I want to make certain now and forever, like you said, Mark, we've been wrestling with this, and town council and town administrator has been wrestling with this for, I don't know, a year and a half now. And we need to put this issue to bed once and for all, because we don't want the next town council, the next board of selectmen, the next town administrator, or the next property owner to be having to concern themselves with this. We need to take whatever legal action is required. And furthermore, I want to make sure that the town, and only the town, decides when and if the storm blocks should be placed at the top of the ramp, and that the town has access to use this ramp to access the beach equipment, with equipment for breaking the beach, but also emergency vehicles. And people have been very confused and upset about the various signs and barricades, rope. Aside from the concrete blocks, there have been ropes placed across there with signs, and people are upset. And so I agree, we need to take whatever legal action needs to be done, mark it as a public easement access in no uncertain terms, so the people of town aren't feeling uncertain about their rights to use this access to the beach.
If I could just to add to this, and I agree with both Mark and Josh and Dan, you and Tony. I know that the Aldriches have attempted to contact us selectmen individually to discuss this. And I just want them to know that we're not, and I'm speaking for myself in this case, we're not ignoring them on this, on conversation, but this is something that has to be open and in public. So this is the right time to discuss it. And I think the decisions that we're bringing forth right now are the correct ones.
Yeah, and certainly, outside of whatever legal action Dan recommends that we consider, the town is committed to having clear signage that it's a public access point, maintaining the quality of the ramp if it's deteriorating, making sure that that's fixed. And again, you know, certainly, if the homeowner has concerns about any sort of, you know, liability, making sure that it's clear that there's protection provided through the recreational statute. You know, we're certainly not trying to pass off any sort of liability or anything like that. So basically just keeping it the way that it's been since the 73.
Dan, do we need a motion to authorize you to begin this process?
Yeah, if we want to move forward to quieting titled land court, we would need a motion and a vote for that.
Could you suggest one? I could move
Yeah,
it.
yeah. The board would move that they give town council Antonio Barletta the authority to file action in land court to quiet title regarding the easement that we believe we own and the public believes they own, because we've heard that vocally, at the Tudor Beach ramp next to the Aldridge's home at 163 Willow, I believe it is. Let me just make sure that before I have the letter right here.
That is the address, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that would be so moved, and then you can second it and go from there. So someone should so move that motion.
So move.
Great, second somewhere.
Seconded.
Second,
Any discussion?
I guess I'll just add that this really is not about who owns the property. It's really someone else is going to own the property somewhere down the line, and you know it's only fair to clear this up once and for all, especially in light of liability concerns. I think it's the right thing to do, obviously for the people of town that want to use this easement, but also for the property owners. So there's no anxiety about who's responsible for what and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good
Right,
point, Josh. It's not really the ownership that makes the difference, it's the easement. Doesn't matter who owns it at the end of the day.
great point. Roll call vote.
Well, before that, Mr. Chairman, and Tony, if you need to do any certified survey, then you need to do that also.
Yep, and I also I forgot to mention too, back in June when I believe we put that letter together.
Yep.
I believe we invited the homeowners to attend a selectman meeting for the discussion of that.
Yeah, that meeting was on
so-
June 15th.
You know, so I just want to reiterate that, you know, we have reached out and we've attempted to work on this in the past, you know, with the homeowners.
Okay, I think Mark made a suggestion there. Does that have to go into the motion?
No, I don't think that has to go in the motion. I mean, we can do that in a regular course.
Okay, further discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is the short-term rental bylaw review. And I think at our last meeting, I had made a suggestion that we somehow open the door to the selectmen to begin conversations. And in talking with Tony at length on this yesterday, I think probably it would be a good idea to pull the short-term rental committee together with us at maybe our next meeting, Tony. And of course, with the approval of my fellow selectmen, in order to get this thing moving, because we're going to be looking at another month, and we're on top of annual town meeting. And from that moment on, depending upon the vote, we could be looking at moving this thing at a quick pace. So I think now is the time to start to gain some ground on this and get ahead of it, perhaps. Tony, you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Every year leading up to town meeting, I host community meetings to provide background and information on all articles that are going to be presented at town meeting to give residents an opportunity to discuss and ask questions and essentially prepare themselves for a town meeting vote. I'll be doing that again this year. My first talk will be on Friday, the 14th, at the community breakfast at the village church in the morning. I think it's at 8 a.m. On Friday, the 14th. So, you know, the short-term rental topic is definitely one of the bigger issues that's going to be featured at this year's town meeting. So it will be a large talking point or a significant portion of those community meetings so that folks who are going to be attending town meeting can, you know, learn more about the articles and what's before them to vote on. So we can use that as the primary tool to help educate the public. We could invite them to Board of Selectmen meetings as well in the future. And I'll just wanted to, you know, while we're on the topic, I want to kind of cover a little bit on this topic of how we got to where we are. So at a previous town meeting voted to create a short-term rental committee to recommend a bylaw to be presented at an upcoming town meeting. The short-term rental committee had a long public process, multiple public meetings where they discussed a number of different items. They were represented John Coulon from Public Health, Wayne Wilson, Inspectional Services, Rob Thibault, Marie Kladakova, and Steve Viviano from the Planning Board. So there was a number of different folks that were included in the process, bringing different perspectives. And there's two there. They put forward a recommendation for an article. There's two elements to that article. One is amending our zoning bylaws. The other is amending our general bylaws. Because their article includes an amendment to the zoning bylaws, it triggers a process of the planning board to have a public hearing on that proposal. And then the planning board provides a recommendation on that proposal for town meeting. While this is happening, we also received a citizens petition for a recommended article for town meeting, which also has to do with short-term rentals. So there's two different articles on the warrant. Both have zoning changes, both have general bylaw changes. So both triggered the requirement of the planning board to review and provide a recommendation. And because any article for town meeting on the warrant goes before the Advisory and Finance Committee, they too review and provide recommendation on all articles, including these two short-term rentals. So there'll be two articles presented at town meeting. There are significant differences between them. There are a lot of similarities between them. What I would like to do at these community meetings is really educate folks on the differences between the two. I want folks to remember that neither article, this isn't a question of whether you want to allow or disallow short-term rentals in the town. Both articles are regarding the regulation of short-term rentals in our town. And our legal counsel has advised us that there really is no way to prohibit short-term rentals in your community. No other community has done that. You are essentially allowed to regulate and restrict. So currently, there are short-term rentals in our community, but there are no regulations. There is no general bylaw referring to them. So it's important that we get something passed so that there is some sort of licensing and rules and regulations, and that refers to a number of different things related to the inspection of the homes, related to parking, and a number of different items. And I don't want to get too far down into the weeds on it, but I wanted to kind of provide that overview that there are two articles that will be presented at town meeting, one from the short-term rental committee, one from the citizens petition. They are different in ways and they are similar in ways, both of which are pushing for rules and regulations related to short-term rentals. And you will receive in your FinCom book, you'll have a recommendation from the Finance Committee and you'll have a recommendation from the Planning Board on both articles as well. So that's the overview. Like I said, I'd rather, given the time, I don't know if you want to get into, the details and the differences and the similarities tonight. We could do that at a future meeting, and I intend to be doing that in all of my community meetings pre-town meeting.
Tony, if I could, there was one thing I wanted to do is try and connect the dots on what I opened up with. And that basically is the planning board's review, and it came back and they said, and I'm just going to quote this, consistent with its mandate, the STRC Short-Term Rental Committee is proposing amendments to the zoning bylaws, but has left it to the Board of Selectmen to issue more detailed regulatory restrictions. And I'm looking at that as saying, and as you look at it, we're talking about registration, operation, management of short-term rentals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, along with the rules and regulations you're talking about. My question tonight is, can we maintain that committee, that board through town meeting and have them work with us on these items? So
yeah, we included that committee in the, I don't know if you recall, but the very last article of every town warrant is called continued committees. So we included their committee in that list. So it's renewed by town meeting this year. And if the members of that committee are willing to aid us in the development of the regs, which I believe they've had extensive discussions about and have some ideas, we could certainly do that.
Right.
And that the reason they went, and I don't want to speak for them, but I attended or listened in on a lot of meetings, and have discussed it with Dan Scripp, who's been counseling that committee as well, is the Board of Selectmen by charter or by bylaw are the licensing authority in the town. And through that authority, it's your role to develop rules and regulations for those licenses. So it's a natural fit for those rules and regs to be developed by you should the article pass, and that those be, really the requirements for any short-term renter to abide by in order to receive a license and be able to operate.
The other thing I noticed, if I can throw it out to you while you're on this, is that they also mention in the number of suggestions or approvals that they've made, they're talking about us having these rules and regulations. I don't know if the word promulgated falls into place here, but put into place by November the 1st. And I'm presuming that November 1st date follows in line with if it's approved, if the short-term rental bylaw is approved, then it would go to the AG's office, and from the AG's office, is that 6 months for approval?
Actually, it's a little different. For zoning bylaws, they're actually retroactive. They go back to the first date of the first notice of the planning board hearing for the zoning bylaws under 48 section 6. The general bylaws take effect after they're approved by the AG's office and they're published and posted by Diane. Then they take effect. I do believe we have the ability to extend that. We certainly can't make it before that date, but I do believe we can set a provision saying they will become effective on some date after that to give folks time to come up to speed and for this board to come up to speed. So they're not the same thing. They're a little different in terms of timing.
But I agree, Mr. Chairman. I mean, sounds like we really need to get to work on these regulations because there's a high probability that at least one of these two articles, hopefully only one of these two articles, will pass a town meeting. And, so we have to be ready to supplement those with the regulations. So
I can't say the board, the committee did already have a bunch drafted for examples. So they have a good page or two of potential rules and regulations that they're ready to provide you. So they may have given you a head start.
yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Josh.
But I will say, I think any opportunity to change the article or see if the short-term rental committee wanted to change their article is pretty nearly past. The book is going out to print, I think, April 14th, right, Tony?
Mhm.
So we should focus on the regulation portion.
Well, Tony, last night, didn't the planning board give their approvals?
The finance committee met, I don't know if the
Oh,
planning,
I'm sorry, yeah, finance committee.
again, it's not approval, it's recommendation.
Right.
Same thing from the finance committee. So their role in any planning board, their role in any zoning amendment is to review, have a public hearing and provide a recommendation, for the residents to see for town meeting. So it can help advise residents on how to vote at town meeting. The advisory and finance committee role is the same, but for any article that is placed on the warrant. So they too have been, meeting with the short-term rental committee. They met with the citizen petitioners, reviewed both articles, and they too will have recommendation on both articles. Different, I won't be putting out any sort of recommendation. I don't really believe it's the selectmen's role to put out a recommendation either, but I do find it important for us to educate the public as best we can on the two articles so that people are prepared to make a vote at town meeting. And certainly, as I mentioned before, getting something passed is extremely important in my opinion, because right now we have no rules and regulations, and our zoning does not speak specifically to short-term rentals. So, I think my role is to try to educate the public on what's before them. It's their it's open town meeting. Every resident has a vote and, just try to help inform them on what's in front of them to vote on. So we can try to do that in some way at a future town meeting. At a future Board of Selectmen meeting, as well as I will be doing that in the community meetings.
Okay, how would we pull this together with the short-term rental committee? In terms of meeting with them, when would that next meeting be? And would we be taking what Dan just said? Dan said that they already have an extensive list of rules and regulations that we could probably at that meeting review those and maybe come to some agreement with the committee and ourselves as to whether those should go forward or not. Excuse, I got a cold.
My suggestion would be that we don't start getting into the development of rules and regulations until after town meeting. And should the article, and should an article pass directing us to promulgate rules and regulations, that's when we would start getting into those discussions.
Okay.
If you wanted to invite the short-term rental committee to another Board of Selectmen meeting before town meeting, I would limit that discussion to be an educational effort of what is included in their article.
I would like to see that. I don't know how Mark and Josh feel.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think, any opportunity for the voters to get educated, and I think the advantage of having the short-term rental committee present is they can perhaps explain the rationale behind some of the decisions. So why don't we just invite them to the next meeting, see if they can make it.
Mark?
Sounds good.
Okay, so you'll take care of that, Tony?
Yep.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Little Nahant Road.
All right, Dan, you're up.
So there are two moving parts here. One actually is already moved. We got a nice check from HUD to cover, I should say Ed Block got a nice check from HUD covering the taxes that were due since, I think, FY20, and that was over 50 grand. So that was nice. So now the only thing that's overdue is like some small amount of change, like $200 or something, $200. That's also keeping in mind that May is the next bill is going to go out. But before May happens, we do expect this property to be sold for 1.1 million. Now I say expect because it hasn't happened yet, so the horse is still in the barn. But hopefully that will happen before the end of the month, and then we expect to get a nice portion of that amount. We're going to talk about that in executive session because it's not done yet. So it's still sort of an active issue. That check hasn't landed yet, so it's not obviously not something that we can count on. But HUD has been actually very good to work with, and we would expect it to check. Our split would be in the closing documents for the home, so everyone knows where the money is going.
Okay.
So it's moving forward quickly.
So Dan, it looks like we're getting 100% of our principal, maybe not all of the interest, right?
That's the plan. That's the plan. Yep.
Well, that's good. That's good. Good job.
Yep.
Yeah. Great job sticking with this, Dan. It's been a long haul, I know. And
up and down. Yeah.
It's great that we've gotten the 52,000 so far. And if things continue to go well with HUD, then as Mark said, it'll be quite a bit more than the principal owed,
Right.
according to my mental math here. But we'll see.
Okay.
But
We'll talk more about that in executive session.
sticking with us.
What
Yeah.
could that total be?
Well, the total that is on the table is 1.1, but I do think a PNS has been signed, so it's a matter of just closing. But you know how things happen in these transactions; it could fall through at the last minute. I don't expect that to happen. I have no reason to believe that will happen, but it could. So it's not really something we can put in stone yet.
And if it does close, we will get,
We'll talk more about that in executive session because that has to do with
oh, okay,
negotiations.
all right, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
you're
just
right.
making clear, it has to do with negotiations, and it is a potential lawsuit that we're resolving because it's really, at the end of the day, it was a fight over HUD over these proceeds. And we sent a big fat letter saying this is our position. They sent a big fat letter saying this is their position. And to avoid any further, any litigation, we're gonna sign an agreement. That'll be the end of it.
I got you. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, thank you. We're right now at the motion, Mark,
Sure, I move that the Board of Selectmen open the annual town meeting warrant.
Seconded.
discussion.
Thank you. This will be,
We need to vote on it.
oh, please.
Oh, yeah. Josh Antrim, aye.
Don't we want to discuss it before we vote?
We got a vote to
Oh,
open
we
it.
have to open it, open the warrant first and then discuss maybe. Is that all right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Not coming right.
Gene Canty, aye.
So this is likely well, it's probably the second to last time we're gonna have to do this. We may have to meet next week just before the book goes to print, because we haven't received the CPC articles yet that we need to add in here. They have been drafted. They have been provided to the Finance Committee, but their final form approved by legal are going to probably come over the next few days. So we may need to meet just to do a quick up and down vote to add those into the warrant. Tonight's change that we're adding is actually back to short-term rental committees. We had, our previous draft of this warrant had a summary article for the citizens petition. It's typical that when we have long bylaw amendment articles that we just put a simple summary version in the article itself, and then in the warrant itself, and then in the appendix online and in the clerk's office, you can find the longer version of the article. However, we're not allowed to do that with a citizen's petition. We have to put in the exact language that was provided to the clerk's office. So I'll share my screen and show you. This is the article here, Article 25. So there was a short version in here before. What we're doing tonight is we are just gonna vote to approve the warrant as drafted, and then we'll close the warrant. But this is the change. It's just adding in the full short-term rental article into the warrant.
Yep, so just to restate, so this is verbatim, the citizens petition article.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want, I can say, I can say it, you guys can so move it. The vote would be to adopt the changes to the annual town meeting warrant as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept and close the annual town meeting warrant and send it to the Advisory and Finance Committee.
Seconded.
Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
We can skip the next one. There are no changes to the budget.
Okay.
Right. Josh, anything on East Point?
There was a conference with the judge and the attorneys, I think a week or so ago. And essentially the schedule was stretched out. The discovery phase goes to now, I think, the end of September. I don't have those dates handy, but essentially I think it's the discovery phase goes to the end of September. So, and then the judge goes into, he rotates duty with criminal cases. So he's occupied for the next, I don't know, 4 months or something like that with criminal cases. So probably not a lot happening till late fall at the earliest, other than depositions continuing and that sort of thing.
Hey, Dan, how does discovery work?
Discovery is a phase of litigation where each party learns about the other party's alleged facts, and it's usually done through three venues. One, as everyone knows, is a deposition where you actually sit down with an attorney and give testimony under oath. But that usually occurs after written questions are exchanged by the parties and answered by the parties, and also document requests are exchanged and responded to by the parties. Those are the three main ways of getting discovery. There are other ways too, but those are the three main ones. So typical litigation goes to the pleading stage, complaint, answer, maybe a motion dismiss. Then the discovery phase, which is nice and fat, that can take months, maybe sometimes years. And then you get into a phase where discovery is done, what we say it's closed. And then we have an opportunity to file what they call dispositive motions. I think summary judgment you guys know about. And that's not always in every case. And then usually it proceeds to the trial phase.
Thank
So
you.
discovery is very important. It's where you learn about the other cases.
I don't know. Dan, I've been going through this now for 4 years, and I think I can pass the bar.
I'll bet you can. Well, you know what they say. You never ask a trial question that you don't know the answer to. Well, that's where you get the answers through discovery. That's where you get the answers. And you have a transcript right in your hand, which is a part of discovery when you're actually interrogating someone on the stand. So, yeah.
I have dug up the actual dates here. I can take a quick moment to read them. At the status conference, the court entered the following litigation schedule for the validity phase. Depositions completed by June 30th. Dispositive motion served. Dispositive motion
Nice.
served August 15th. Opposition to dispositive motion served September 15th. Replies served September 25th. Dispositive motion package filed September 28th. So that's the schedule for discovery of the validity phase.
Okay, any other discussion on East Point? Tony, town administrators report.
Before I get into what's on the agenda, I just wanted to announce the town received a $15,000 meta grant, which is going to pay for technical assistance on an electrification study for the library. We have a press release drafted, likely to go out tomorrow, but we're pleased to get that news. Northern Strand Extensions, the other is the first on my list. There was a public meeting held by MassDOT a couple weeks ago. Number of residents attended. I think all of you and myself have received some comments from residents who were in attendance, concerns, requests. And so I'm putting together a letter to send as our formal comments in response to that meeting. And at the end of near the end of that meeting, I made a request on your behalf that MassDOT consider a pilot project with a traffic study to follow and a in-person, public meeting with Nahant residents to discuss, what those impacts are going to be on the Linway with this project. So we'll be formalizing that request in writing and sending it in.
Great.
Um,
Excellent.
Tony, post that letter online when you finish with it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am very adamant that we need to do this traffic study where we block off the lanes that are proposed to be blocked off during a period of time that represents high traffic time, like the summer, for example, and or the end of spring when people are commuting. We need to know, the people in Swampscott need to know, the people in Marblehead need to know what this is going to mean to them. I am a cycling enthusiast. I've ridden literally thousands of miles on bike paths. I'm supportive of bike paths. I think eliminating a lane of the Linway is stupid.
Josh is eloquently stated, because no matter how you look at this, traffic will be impacted.
And here's someone who's successful riding his bike across the country. So
Yeah.
you've driven in traffic, I'm sure, before, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not that I'm opposed to bike paths. In fact, our final day, we took the Northern Strand, which was very rough gravel at the time. I'm excited about that. It's a great bike path, but I think, to be, in all fairness to people who are using the cars, I mean, just think about, like, how do you get out? Someone raised this at the public hearing. So if you're trying to exit, for example, the Beacon the new condos there, I guess those ones have a light. So let's say you're trying to leave Quinn of Lynn, you have to be backed up further back than the bike path and wait for your opportunity to pull out into what is now the middle lane, basically stomp on it and bang a 90-degree turn. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a bad idea as currently structured. It is nothing against bike paths. It's nothing against, the good intentions behind the bike path. I just think, it's going to create a traffic problem.
A Marblehead and Swampscott, either town commenting on this?
There were very few people on the public hearing, and that's the 100% design public hearing that was held a few weeks ago. So kind of a disappointing turnout. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say disappointing turnout. I would think that people that make that commute daily would at least want more information, even if they didn't want to object.
I'll tell you, when we had one lane closed for our sewer job, there was a lot of people commenting from our surrounding neighborhoods about the impact of that. And I think that's, so there's, as Josh just mentioned, there's a number of concerns about the design of the project. Certainly there's support for the project, but there's concerns and questions about the design. I will say that I've equally heard a lot of complaints about the public process, which I think is where you're going, Gene, of this project. It really initiated in late 2018, and then in 2019, when we were going through the pandemic, a lot of the public meetings were held through Zoom, really, limited attendance from not just Nahant, but of course our other surrounding communities. So that's why I think requesting a pilot project will really ignite feedback from the communities, the surrounding communities, and those that'll be impacted. And I think requesting that they have more of a robust review or public meeting is important, because that meeting the other night was great, but it was it had a hard stop at 8 o'clock. It really wasn't a great, when people made comments or I asked questions, it was listened to, but it wasn't responded to. It was just, okay, thank you, move on to the next one. And I think that is what I've heard a lot from residents is, that really wasn't a true opportunity to voice my opinion. So that's why I think that's got to be part of our request is a better version of a public process.
It was very boilerplate.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think the first time that I was invited to a meeting in Northern Strand was when it was at 70% design completion. And I said to Tony at the time that I think the cake is baked here, pretty much. We're invited into this process when it's 70% completed, and we did manage to get some minor concessions, but I think a pilot study is essential. And if
Agree.
what they're proposing in their traffic studies, if it's not going to be an issue, then they shouldn't be concerned about having a pilot study.
Yeah.
A pilot study should only confirm their initial conclusions. And
Absolutely.
if you want, I think, Tony, maybe each of us individually could contact a state senator and state representative and advocate for that. I will certainly call the mayor of Lynn myself and ask him to support that.
I met with Representative Capano shortly after that meeting and expressed a lot of these comments, and he was happy to support our request.
Okay.
Short Beach Playground. So we had CPC funds a few years ago to replace and install some new equipment at the Short Beach Playground by Little Nahant. We went through a public process discussing, what our budget allowed, what the existing space allowed, what the neighboring, residents there would prefer to see. And we ended up on a pirate ship type climbing structure and a whale. Both pieces have been purchased. They're expected to be delivered in August and installed. So I know it's been some time since we've met with the public on that project, and wanted to give the update that we're expecting them to be delivered and installed in August. Coyote management plan. So we posted some new information to our website. We've been working with Mass Wildlife and looking at coyote management plans developed by the Humane Society and other communities. And we've been putting together our own formal document. I will say that, it's important to note that a very significant portion of these formal coyote management plans we already have in place, and we've had in place for over a year, maybe 2 years now, and on our website. But having them in a formal document is the effort that we've really been putting in recently. We've also been talking with, as I mentioned, Mass Wildlife about seasonal specific guidance that we can help distribute to our residents. So we put some of that on our website, and I'm hoping for them to produce a video version of that information, because I feel that's a better way to communicate with the public. And if we're hoping to have them to be kind of more seasonally specific. So right now, a lot of the information that we are putting out there is about pupping season and, really trying to avoid newborn pups or den areas. I had a question earlier about, where are the dens? We don't know specifically where the dens may be, but we know what typical locations of potential dens, really, wooded areas, brushy areas, such as the Heritage Trail, the golf course, East Point, Bailey's Hill, different areas like that. You really, if you are, you want to follow the same guidance that we've been talking about for the last 2 years about keeping your pet on a leash and knowing how to properly haze coyotes. But in the pupping season, when newborn pups are born, you really don't want to haze those. You want to try to avoid those scenarios. And there's you don't want to turn your back. You want to walk backwards slowly. There's a different way to approach that situation, which is there's some informative videos online that we posted one today from Project Coyote, and we're going to be adding that to our website as well. Once pupping season is over and the pups grow and start to separate from the den, start to walk away from the den on their own, residents need to be, we need to encourage residents to haze coyotes so that these new pups learn to avoid human beings. You have to keep in mind that any hazing attempts that you've done last year don't apply to these new pups. So it's very important that once they grow, that they learn to avoid human beings. The techniques are included in those videos, and we'll continue to post those as well. It's really important that even if you're not walking your pet, if you're walking around town, if you're heading out to put your garbage out, if you are, any scenario like that, your effort of hazing a coyote could prevent a future conflict. So if not for you, please commit to it because it could help your neighbor. And again, really encouraging the reporting of any type of incidents like that, any type of activity. It's really important that you as residents report that information to the town. And on our website, there are directions, there's a response plan that talks about the type of behavior, who you should report it to, how the town will respond, and details like that. That information is important to us because then we're able to investigate common areas of sightings, to look for potential food sources. And this goes right back to what John Coulon was talking about earlier with rodent control. It's all very similar scenario where you want to try to prevent or eliminate those potential food sources. And as John mentioned, John, myself, and our animal control officer, Scott, actually went on a stroll around town and looked in locations where a lot of sightings and data points have been reported to us, investigated those areas for potential food sources. We didn't find any, which kind of throws another wrinkle in how we approach our response. But certainly it's a great first step, is to look in those areas for, if we had found any potential food sources, we'd have the ability to try to correct them. And I'll also say that, at town meeting this year, there's a bylaw being proposed to give us a little bit more strength on enforcing those wildlife feeding issues. So if you go on our website, nahant.org, right on the right side, there's a picture of a coyote. If you click on that, it'll bring you to the coyote information page. There you'll see our coyote management plan and a lot of the details that have been on there previously, plus new recent information that we just updated specific to the current season that we're in. And we're going to continue to, push the public to educate them on, that season-specific behavior, what to expect, how to respond, and again, really push the need for residents to report information to us so that we can respond properly.
Tony, would you mind if I supplement what you just said?
Yes, I would
You
not.
wouldn't mind?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so, again, we've been listening to the experts and also the advocates, and essentially took all that advice and broke it down into 7 specific actions. So, we've been hearing, number 1, you need a coyote management plan. So what we did is we took the Humane Society of the United States has a template that they encourage communities to use as a template. That Humane Society plan has been customized for Nahant and is now posted on nahant.org as of today. Number 2, we've been told we need to investigate any potential food sources, as you've already heard. That survey going to specific locations that had been previously identified. It's happening in my computer. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, the screen's gone black here, but so that survey took place. As you just heard, no food service sources were found, even in the locations that had been specifically suggested as potential locations. We've been told you should have a law that prohibits feeding of wildlife. So that bylaw is on the docket for town meeting in May. Number 3. Number 4, we should have some public notifications specific to the pupping season. So there's been some updates to nahant.org. In addition, Tony's going to arrange for the electronic sign to have a short message about the aggressive nature of coyotes during pupping season as precaution. And that has also been added to the Nahant Town Hall Facebook page. Number 5, we've located an excellent 3-minute hazing video that went on the Town Hall Facebook page. It will be up on tomorrow. Tony tells me that's a good one. It's 3 minutes long. Number 6, we're buying more of the signs that have been posted around town to supplement what's already there in some of the common locations. Those signs do have a QR code, which takes you directly to the coyote page on nahant.org. So the benefit of that is as updates to that page are made, the QR code stays in effect. So we can customize the message on the coyote page on nahant.org for the season. So it's been updated for spring. When it comes time to the fall, when the pups are now larger and hungrier, we'll update it seasonally. And number 7, this is the only one that's still pending, and that's the mass wildlife video with some specific pup related advice and information that is something that Mass Wildlife's working on. We don't yet have that, but those are the specific actions that we've taken. We think we've approached this in a logical and thorough fashion, and that's where we stand as of today.
Great plan. Outstanding. A lot of work. Great success, I'm sure. Do we want to entertain any discussion here rather than taking it into citizens forum?
I don't have anything else on my list.
No, you have nothing else on your list. Okay, so we can stay there. Hey, one thing if we could, before we go to citizens forum. Tony and I had a discussion yesterday. I don't know how we leaked into this, but we started talking about safety. And I had no idea how safe and secure we are in town. And Tony, I'm going to ask you if you would not mind tonight, there's too much involved. If you would pull together some of what we talked about, the drones, the IP address cameras throughout the town, all around the coastline. The equipment was so well equipped and well trained, much better than most communities. And I think people would like to hear that. And I think if we could get the chief of the fire and the police and the town harbor master to listen in and contribute to it. I think you guys, you do such a great job. It goes unnoticed, really. And it really would be nice to know, like I was blown away with it. I didn't realize we were so technically proficient. It's great.
When it comes to ocean rescue, it's very comprehensive approach, divided amongst the harbor master, the fire department, emergency management, the police department. And we utilize a number of different tools and technology to help us, with that effort. So as you just mentioned, we've had coastal cameras for quite some time in the town of Nahant. We've recently worked with the state police and Homeland Security to improve upon that system and keep it working. It certainly helps in the ocean rescue effort. We've had our police, emergency management, and fire separately are being trained on how to pilot drones in the event that we would need one for support in that scenario. We've had drone flights surveys of our coastline completed, and we'll continue to do that on an annual basis. That's utilized in our ocean rescue planning, but it's actually more of a climate change and storm. It's more of a climate change preparation effort. And of course, in our fire department and in our harbor master, over the last 5 years, we're able to take on a new harbor master boat that provides us a ton of new abilities. Our fire department have a new ocean rescue truck, have a new jet ski, and have a new have another boat that's used just for ocean rescue as well. And they do an enormous amount of ocean rescue training regularly. So yeah, it's very comprehensive. Both Chief Furlong and Chief Antrim and Rob Thibault do a tremendous job, and I'm sure the three of them would be happy to come online and talk a little bit more about what they do.
That'd be great. That really would. Just what you just discussed now is comprehensive to some degree, and having them support it would certainly not hurt. But that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else before we go to citizens forum? Mark, Josh?
No, well said.
No.
Okay. Do we have anybody out there?
So I have Ken Carangelo, if you're able to unmute, state your name and address. I see you had mentioned something in the chat. Wanted to let you ask a question yourself.
Hi, Tony, thanks. Yes, Ken Carangelo, 81 Willow Road. I wanted to just clarify, get some clarifications on the discussion around the beach the ramp at the other end of Tudor Beach. Dan had mentioned that the homeowner thinks it's on his deed. It's my understanding that it actually is on the physical deed as recorded, and what the easement and everything is sort of taking precedence over that. I just want to make sure the homeowner is being represented fairly here.
Sure. Dan?
Yeah, well, Ken, the homeowner has every right to be here. Agenda was posted in due time, so he has a right to speak for himself, to be quite frank. We don't believe.
I'm curious too, Dan, so.
Yeah, he had every right to be here. Matter of fact, we invited him to a meeting back in June when we knew this was on the agenda. He decided not to attend. So I appreciate you might be carrying his trumpet, but the fact is he has every reason and right to be here, and he chooses not to be. Number one. Number two, we don't believe that what he provided to us shows that the area of the ramp that's in question is on his property. Apparently, he never thought it was until he got a drawing because he had something go for the Concom, and he got that impression that that half the ramp is actually his. We disagree with that because what he gave us wasn't really what you would use to set the parameters of property. It was more of like a plan of
as-built,
like an as-built or something. But it wasn't what engineers would use or surveyors would use to really delineate lines of property. So what he gave us really wasn't appropriate. And we told him that. We said, listen, this is not what we need. We need X, Y, and Z, like we have like 1916 or something that we're using. He just never gave it to us. So that's fine. He doesn't have to do that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who owns it because we believe that the public and the town have both earned easements, prescriptive easements over whoever owns that property. So at the end of the day, I think you mentioned it doesn't even matter who owns it because the easements are there. It would just make the argument easier if he would agree that we actually own it, but he's not.
Okay, understood. And then the other question was, is between, say, today and when the easement is, officially filed and presumably approved, who's liable if something happens on the ramp?
Well, since we believe we have the easement, we would be the dominant tenement. We have the duty and responsibility to maintain it, and we've always maintained it. That's nothing new. No one's questioning that. So it would be, since we believe we are the dominant tenement, it would be our responsibility to maintain it. Therefore, if there was unreasonable maintenance, which is to say something was left there for a period of time, not a sudden storm that pops up and throws ice on there, that someone could look to the town for liability. But then there are some defenses there because it's a recreational area, because you're assessing it for recreational purposes. So the recreational use statute, chapter 90 might come in because it might be considered a public way too, given that it's a public sort of easement, and that has its own defenses to it. But I don't think the town has any. We agree that we are responsible for maintaining it. So thereby, if anyone gets hurt, then we expect that someone to come to the town and say, "Listen, you got to resolve this issue one way or the other."
Just trying to clarify the buzz among the dog walkers on Tudor Beach.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about that, but
and Ken, I'll just say that we expressed our position last year to the homeowners that we felt as the dominant tenant that we, I guess, held the liability, and that they were, didn't need to. Obviously, we can't prevent anybody from filing a lawsuit, but we felt that, we felt strong about our position. So we, not only did we, notify them of that, but we also have offered to, improve signage that would make it clear to anybody using the ramp that it's, come to the town if you have an issue.
Okay. No, that's fair. Thank you. One related question, and not to jump ahead, is there by chance a CPC article regarding this?
There is not.
Okay. Next year.
Yeah, it's, you mean like for the maintenance, like to improve the quality of the ramp itself?
Yeah. Indoor disabled access, or there's a bunch of stuff that could be done. Yeah.
So we looked into it. It's going to be a pretty significant cost. There's just a lot of permitting involved in it. because of where it sits on the beach. So it may exceed a CPC, but we could also, supplement that with town funds, but it's definitely, we've been that area, not just the ramp, but the entire Tudor Beach wall is on our radar for, structural improvements because of climate change.
Great, thank you.
Good to see you back in the forum, Ken.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, thanks. Francine? Again, if you could just state your name and address.
Francine Amari Faulkner, 295 Nahant Road. I appreciate all that you guys are doing and the energy you put into the coyote response plan. I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to point out that it still sounds like you've left a lot of the onus up to residents to learn how to haze and such. And there still needs to be the law enforcement piece, like ticketing people whose dogs aren't on leash and people who aren't disposing of trash properly. But that's I really wanted to talk tonight about the permit, and I have a couple questions at the end. Okay, so according to the permit that authorizes the killing, the following conditions must be met before Mass Wildlife may even issue a permit. These conditions are: 1, that coyote behavior at specific locations has been identified to pose a threat to human health and safety, and 2, the USDA must be given permission by Mass Wildlife to kill on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so how can the permit that you guys have now be valid if there have been no coyote conflicts since November of 2022? You cannot identify locations of questionable behavior when there have been no conflicts, and there can be no threat to human health and safety when there have been no conflicts. Okay, so here are my questions. You want them one? I got 3 questions. I'll give them to you one at a time. Okay. When did Mass Wildlife assess the conditions in Nahant that would allow the USDA to kill coyotes?
It sounds like a question for Mass Wildlife.
Well, it's got to pertain to the new contract, or it's invalid.
Okay, what's the next question?
Okay, so you want to get back to me on that, or
Well, why don't you give us all 3 questions?
Okay, did town council read the permit to ensure its legality? Is Daniel Script still on here? I don't.
No, I haven't seen that. I think that was more from the state than me.
I'm sorry, Daniel, I didn't hear what you just said.
No, that was more the state that came up with that. I didn't draft that.
Okay, so that maybe is something you need to look at. Did town council evaluate the legality of the contract with USDA signed by the town administrator? So it doesn't sound like you did, Daniel.
Well, I have to be careful what I discuss with regard to my legal advice to the town. I don't have the ability to share that. But I can just say that the contract came from as far as I know, it came from the state. So that's about as far as I can discuss that.
Are you attempting to imply that the contract and permit are illegal?
It's possible, Tony. I believe they're invalid.
So again, that contract and that permit provided to us through Mass Wildlife and USDA. Those seem like questions you need to address with them.
Well, but the town has engaged this, so you guys represent the town. So you've got to, if you're using a contract that's invalid, then what you're doing is illegal, and that leaves the town liable. So this needs to be looked into because you've got an invalid contract. So if you operate based on those premises, what you're doing is illegal.
Okay, well, we don't believe that we have an illegal contract. We don't believe that Mass Wildlife would issue us an illegal permit, and we don't believe that the federal government would engage in a contract with the town under an illegal permit. So there's a disagreement, and we'll just leave it at that. I think you should,
Tony,
if you have a question about it, you should talk to Mass Wildlife and USDA.
Excuse me, Francine, Tony. I could be totally wrong. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think this is the stage to discuss this.
Excuse me, Jean, 1 second. There are specific things that are stated in the contract and there are conditions that have to be met. And those conditions have not been met. So I think this
It's an
all
opinion.
deserves further
It's a matter of
inquiry.
opinion. That's a matter of opinion.
It's black and white, Tony. It's in the contract.
No,
It's not opinion.
your opinion is that those conditions have not been met.
It's specific locations. I read off 2 of the conditions.
Okay,
Would you be willing to would you look into this and or the permit, okay? I'm saying contract, it's a permit, okay? So what is the evidence? You know, how about you look into it? Can you look into it and get back to me? Or is this something we can?
That's better.
You know, where's the evidence of the conditions? That's what I'm trying to get to.
all right,
And they're the conditions of the permit. So
okay.
it's pretty black and white. It's not opinion.
I'm not gonna go back and forth with you again on whether or not we have the legal or ability or been approved or given the authority through the state to hire the federal agency to engage in this activity. We've gone through this a number of times. I understand that you have a disagreement with the effort that the town has made, but there is no illegal activity occurring. And if you believe that there is, you can speak with Mass Wildlife or USDA about it. They're the ones who have issued the permit and the contract.
So Tony, what is the activity the town has engaged with
I'm
USDA?
not going to go over it again.
Francine, let me jump in. If you have an issue, Francine, Tony is correct. Engage with Mass Wildlife or the Inspector General's office. If you think we're doing something illegal, contact the Inspector General or the AG and file your complaint. If that's what you
Okay,
want.
all right, Mark, thanks. I'll look into it further. Thank you.
All right.
Further discussion.
Rochelle, if you could say your name and address.
Hi, Rochelle Capobianco, 131 Castle Road. Tony, you said that you believe that this contract is valid and you said a lot of beliefs, but a lawyer really should be looking at this. We are not allowed to talk with Mass Wildlife on a contract that they have with the town of Nahant. They will not talk to a resident. So, I mean, Mark, short of calling the AG's office, I guess that's the only thing we could do.
If you think there's a violation of the procurement laws in Nahant, and we feel like we're complying with them, then yeah, contact the Inspector General.
Why can't the town council just review this contract? It'd be a lot cheaper. It'll be a lot less headache than, just doing it the right way, now.
There's no, there is no, town council can take a look at the contract.
Good.
What you're talking about is whether conditions were met that would have initiated the effort that's included in the contract, but that was determined by Mass Wildlife. Right? So we give the information to Mass Wildlife. They authorized the ability for us to remove a problem animal, which which I have said is not new.
That's understandable, but if
Mass
there's been no
Wildlife- Mass Wildlife authorizes many times. Mass Wildlife has provided permits to the USDA and problem animal control officers to remove problem animals when they see that those conditions have been met. They saw those conditions were met here in Nahant, gave us the authority, and we signed a contract with USDA.
But there have been no issues since, like Francine said, since November. So why is it continuing? I mean,
We
who's
have the-
giving the information to wildlife?
We
USDA.
have the contract in place so that if we have other issues, we're going to report those to Mass Wildlife. They would dictate whether we're given the authority to utilize USDA services to remove a problem animal in the future.
So they're not removing any now then? They
Correct.
haven't, correct. Okay,
Only one coyote has been removed from the town of Nahant by USDA services.
and they're not coming back until a problem animal is,
They're still under contract. They may be in town, but they're not attempting to remove coyotes.
okay. I would really appreciate it though if Mr. Script could look at the contract, just to see the validity of it. You know, like Francine said, I haven't seen it. She has, I guess. I haven't, but we can't contact USDA. They will not talk to us about your contract with them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Francine?
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Francine.
I had another quick question. Tony, why are the cameras up? Why did USDA put up cameras?
It's important to keep track of where the coyote activity occurs in Nahant.
But the USDA doesn't keep track of coyote activity. The only reason the USDA keeps track of coyotes is to make it easier to kill them. And the coyote activity is going to move continually. So there's no reason to be tracking them unless you have an intention to kill them.
I just have, I guess, a difference in opinion on that. And in fact, I think you yourself and Rebecca has expressed repeatedly the importance of tracking the activity of coyotes in our town.
Yeah, but we actually map it. The USDA is not mapping the activity, Tony. And USDA doesn't keep track of the activity.
But all data of activity is important. All that data is important to us.
Yeah, but the USDA doesn't keep track of it for you.
They are tracking, they have cameras out, they're tracking activity. That information can be provided to the town. We can take info into that information. If we find that we are seeing activity in a certain area, move cameras to continue to see where those coyotes are traveling. We could identify where a den is, and then we could educate the public on how to stay away from that area. In fact, it's more reliable information than relying on just data points presented to the town through the public, which we've had a hard time getting from the public. Of course, we're still continuing to ask the public to submit information to us, but it doesn't happen all the time. So, you know, this information could help us determine where coyotes tend to be in town, and we can use that information to educate the public on how to stay away from those areas. And God forbid something, some negative event occur in the future, and we do need to utilize USDA services like we have in the past. We already have an idea of where those coyotes might be, instead of 3 months later after the activity occurred, attempting to handle it in that way.
So I'm just curious though, how are they supplying the data to you? Are they giving you like little reports on this, or how is USDA actually tracking it? Because they don't typically do that.
I don't know, you'd have to ask USDA.
Well, so they haven't given you anything yet as an example of what they would provide. So,
No.
and honestly, Tony, I don't think that that's something they provide. So I don't think you're going to get that from them.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Do we have anybody else out there, Tony?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Rochelle has her hand up.
Thank you, Francine.
Hi, one more question, Rochelle Capabianco again. Does anyone from the town check out the Reports website app, the app? Because every day there are sightings on that, and some have videos, some have photos, some have no image. I mean, it tells you where they're found. So does anybody keep track of that?
On occasion, we'll look at that as a way to, like I mentioned, we went on that walk the other day to look for potential food sources. But really, we're encouraging residents to report that information directly to us. Instead of us having to find it on Facebook or Repot. It's really important that residents report that information directly to us, to our animal control officer.
I get a notification on my phone twice a day. I mean, it's just there, so I can see it. I think a lot of the residents might be reluctant doing that, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we look at it occasionally, but our animal control officer is part-time. We don't have a full-time staff member dedicated to reviewing, social media or Repot, to see all that stuff on a daily basis. But we will check into it. USDA uses that, looks into that as well. You definitely, following that information as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Tony, any citizens on the forum?
I don't see anyone else in the chat. If anyone else on the call wants to raise their hand and unmute, can do so now.
Okay, Mark, do you want to move us into executive session?
Sure. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy as to the impending litigation against HUD regarding 9 Little Nahant Road, and B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A3, to discuss pending litigation strategy regarding the town of Nahant versus 5 postcard housing tenants. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, the chair, if the chair does declare that an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the negotiating body, will not return to open meeting.
The chair does declare the same.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye.
Gene Canty, aye. Thank you all.
Right.